Brian, fixed index annuities offer many different crediting options. Let's explore those in this video. First of all, what is a crediting option?
Yeah, when it comes to a fixed index annuity, they earn interest. How do they earn it? Because, you buy a CD, when you buy it, they say, okay, we're going to pay you 1%. Okay, you know what you're going to get. Or even a fixed annuity. A fixed annuity, they'll, what am I going to get? They'll tell you exactly for what period of time you're going to get it. It doesn't work that way with fixed indexed annuities. Your interest will be credited based on other factors. So I wanted to explore what those are because it's kind of rather confusing. So I thought I'd hit each one here. The first one is most fixed index annuities have, many of them have a cap to how much you can earn. Almost all of them have a floor. So one of the components of a fixed index annuity, a standard component, is that they have a floor of 0. Meaning no matter how bad the stock market or whatever index you're tracking did in a given year or a given 2-year period, you can't go negative. You can't lose money. So that's a big attraction to a fixed indexed annuity. Now, as I mentioned, some of them have caps. So let's say you did a fixed indexed annuity and had a floor of 0 and had a 1-year measurement period, and that measurement period was the S&P 500. So you might get all of the gains of the S&P 500. And when I listen to other radio shows and other people on the radio or doing seminars, sometimes they make it sound like you take no risk on the downside, get all the upside. Well, if that were the case, it's too good to be true. Everybody would do it. No, they have a cap. So the thing they're talking about might have a ceiling. And so maybe you take no risk of loss, but in a given year you can get all of the S&P 500 gains up to 5% or 6%, whatever that cap is. Anything above that you don't get. So that's a floor and a cap.
All right, and there's this thing called participation rate that I've heard about. Explain that.
Yeah, so let's say the S&P 500 in this example went up 30%, and you had a cap of 5. You're going to get 5, okay? The next year it goes down 30%. You're going to get a 0 that year because it had a floor. But instead of doing that one, maybe you pick the one of the participation rate. And let's say that the market went up 30 and down 30 in 2 consecutive years. If you had a participation rate, and let's say they gave you 30% of the gains. So it went up 30 times 30%, 9%. So instead of capping out at 5, you had an unlimited upside of a participation rate. You participated in some of it with no cap, no ceiling. And so you got 9% in the good year. Again, the second year you got a 0 because it had a floor of 0.
Brian, there's also this term when it comes to fixed index annuities called the spread. What is that?
Yeah, that's where the index that you're measuring, so in this example, whatever the index does, you get minus a spread. So let's say that they had a particular index that did 10% that year and your spread was 3, you get 7. If the index did 3 minus 3, you get a 0. If it did negative, you get a 0. If it did 20, you get 17. So it would be the 100% of the index with no participation rate, but minus a particular amount called the spread.
And Brian, there's another one that's called the annuity point-to-point. What is that?
Yeah, all of these are measured over a period of time. So if you bought an annuity on June 1st, you would, the next May 31st, you measure that 1-year period, and whatever that index did during that 1-year period is what you apply. It doesn't matter how it got there. It doesn't matter if it was up during the year and gave it back, or it was down all year and it just came up at the end. It's just a 1-year point-to-point. There's also a 2-year point-to-point, and so they'll have different measurements there. The positive of the 2-year point-to-point is they might give you a bigger percentage of the gain. The negative is, let's say that one of the years was up and 1 year's down. Well, 2 years you might have no change. Whereas with the 1 years, you would have got a profit in one of the years and a 0 in the other, so you'd be ahead.
Brian, earlier you talked about a floor and a cap. Is there an uncapped index? No limit to the upside?
Yeah. So certainly the participation rate ones, proprietary indexes is another thing. That's where it gets kind of complicated because I've talked about measuring the S&P 500. We all know what that is, but few of us know what the Barclays weighted index is, or some of these other proprietary indexes. They're a mix. They have these different calculations. They're almost impossible to explain. explain. All we can kind of look at is historical results on some of those. So it can get a little confusing picking from proprietary indexes.
Brian, can you put these numbers into a simple example that we might be able to understand better?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, depending on whether it's a 1 year or 2 year or whether it's a cap, a spread, and all that stuff, you'll get different results. But the final point I wanted to make on these fixed index annuities is you don't necessarily have to pick one of these different crediting options. You might be able to pick from all of them. They might offer 5 different crediting options, and you go, okay, I want 20% in each one because I just can't make heads or tails of all of these. You can even put some money into the fixed category and know exactly what you're going to get. So very often we might have multiple indexes for a particular person, and some years one index does better than the others, and you might want to stick with that because some years they do worse. And rather than switch out, maybe the next year they'll do better because they kind of ebb and flow. And so often we'll be tracking these for our clients and have a mixture of different crediting options.
Brian, thanks for telling us more about annuity crediting options.